Okay, so we are working through question 1 here, which says let f be equal to this. Part of the graph of f is shown below. Here it is shown. The very first thing that we're being asked to do here is find the coordinates of the turning points. So that means we need to find this point and we need to find this point, and they need to be in coordinates. Now, in order to do that, the way in which we find turning points is we just find the stationary points, which means we're going to differentiate f, set it equal to 0, and then solve it for x. So differentiate f, set it equal to 0, solve for x. So we come to our trusty CAS calculator here, and we're going to define what f of x is. Control that is going to be x cubed minus 5x, which is going to be that right there. Now we can do this. So we're going to go menu, algebra, solve. We're solving for when the derivative of f, so shift minus, we're differentiating with respect to x of f of x. When it's equal to 0, we're trying to figure out what our x's are going to be, and we're going to end up with those. So let's just zoom in here for a second and write down this. So our x's are going to be, it looks like it's going to be plus or minus the square root of 15 on 3. But now, remember, we need to answer in coordinates. So therefore, what our answer is going to be is f of, now let's just go slowly through this. I'm going to chuck in this value here to get that out, and then come over here, chuck in that one to get the other one out. So I'm just subbing them into f in order to get my answers. So it's going to be that, which corresponds to 10, the square root of 15 on 9. Close it, then open it up again. It's going to be the square root of 15 on 3, negative 10, the square root of 15 on 9. Like that. Perfect. Let's now look at the examiner's report and see how people answered this, and also try to be neat. I mean, this was a bit messy, wasn't it? All right, so if we open this up, you can see that 74% of students got the full 2 marks here. We've got our function. We've found the derivative of it. We've set it equal to 0. We've solved for x, in which case we're going to get the square root of 15 on 3. And then we've substituted those back into f to get these out. And these look correct. The question was answered well. Exact answers were required to obtain full marks. Some students gave their answers as this and this. Others gave only the x values. Some mixed up the signs. So right here, you kind of have a microcosm of lots of little mistakes that people always make. The first of which is you have to give your answers as exact answers. You have to give exact answers unless the question specifies. So you can't give your answers like this. You need to give them as exact answers. Also, make sure you read the question. It says coordinates, so you can't just give the x values. And just always be careful of the signs as well. But 74% of students got this correct, which is pretty good. All right, let's keep chugging along now. And come down here. Let's now answer this one. All right, so this is saying, if A is this and B is this, find 2 points of the graph f. Sorry, let me try that again. A is this and B is this, and these are 2 points on the graph f. Find the equation of the straight line through A and B. All right, so the first thing that I would want to do is actually figure out what A and B are. So what are the actual coordinates of them? And that's pretty easy to find. What we're going to do is go f of, now my A has an x value of -1, so if I put -1 into it, I'm going to get out 4, and so too with my B. B has an x value of +1, so if I get that out, put that in, I get -4 out. So that means this is going to be -1, +4, and B is going to be +1, -4. So just make sure you don't make any mistakes with that. All right, having now figured that out, what we're next going to do, because we're finding the equation of this thing, let's figure out what the gradient is going to be. So my gradient of AB is going to be my y2 minus y1, which will be -4 minus 4, subtract, it will be 1 minus -1, which is going to end up being -8. This is going to be +2, which is going to be -4. And now I can do this. I can go y minus, and let's use this point. So that means I'm going to subtract 4 equals my gradient, -4, x minus, now it's going to be minus -1, which is going to be +1. All right, so that means what my final thing here is going to be is y equals -4x minus 4 plus 4, which means y is going to be equal to negative 4, because these are just going to go away with each other. Sorry, negative 4x. There we go. All right, so that would be our answer for that one. So what we did is we first found out what our points are going to be. We then found the gradient, and then I believe this is the gradient point form of an equation to find this. Let's now look at our examiner's report to see how people went with this. And as you can see, 75% of people got the full 2 marks. First, we found the gradient to get negative 4, which we found here. And then they used this form, which we did right here. I think they just used the other point, but that's fine. We still got the same answer of negative 4x. It says this question was answered well. A common incorrect answer was y is equal to 4x. So in that case, they forgot the negative. By inspection of the graph, the gradient was negative. So you could have simply looked up at the graph, drawn in these points, and realized that it's going to be negative. Some students made arithmetic errors when calculating the gradient and or y-intercept. Okay, let's keep on chugging along now. The next thing we need to do is find the distance AB. Oh, what is this? So what we're going to do here is I'm actually just going to remind myself what these are. And then once I've got these AB, I'm just going to use my distance formula. So hopefully you all remember your distance formula. Your distance formula is going to be the square root. And then it's going to be the difference in my y's, so minus 4 squared, plus the difference in my x's, y minus 1 squared. And I'm not even going to attempt to do this by hand. I believe this is a simple 1 marker. So once I've got that, let's now come to our trusty CAS calculator and put in this information. So it's going to be minus 4, then I'm going to square that, and then I'm going to plus 1. Now this is going to be plus 1 here. Then I'm going to square it there. And having done that, that's my answer. So my answer is going to be 2 the square root of 17. So why do the risk of doing it by hand? You know, you do it by hand, you increase the risk of screwing something up. All right, let's look at our examiner's report here to see what they have to say to us. As you can see, 78% of students got the full 1 mark here. Here is our distance formula. And there is the working to get 2 the square root of 17. The distance formula was used well. Some students applied this by hand and made arithmetic errors. Others had an incorrect distance formula using a multiplication operation between the 2 brackets instead of a plus. A common incorrect answer was the square root of 64. So here are some things that I've already mentioned, and that is students that did this by hand often made arithmetic errors, and then other people for some reason put a multiplication sign between the 2 brackets for the distance formula. I'm not quite sure how on earth they made that mistake, but sometimes you just have brain fog, don't you? So you're just going to make sure that you sweep away that brain fog in your exams, which is tricky. All right, let's come to our next one now. Here we're told let G be equal to this, and as you can see, we've got this K here. So this looks very similar to what we were previously dealing with, but here it was a minus 5x, and so but it looked like this, and now instead of that, we simply have a K in the spot. And K is a positive real number, so it's going to look pretty much, I believe, like what we're dealing with here. Okay. So we've got let C be this, let D be that, be 2 points on the graph. All right, so C and D, just like before, are 2 points on the graph, and we need to find the distance CD in terms of K. To find our distance, we are yet again going to use our distance formula. So let's open this up. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go the difference in our y's. So that's going to be this, subtract this. So, whoa, let's see if we can make that a bit prettier. G1 minus G of negative 1, close brackets, square it, plus the difference in my x's. So that's going to be 1 minus 1 squared. And now I'm going to use my CAS to do this. So the first thing I'm going to do is define what G is. So I'm going to go G of X, then I'm going to go control this, and it's X cubed minus KX. Now here's a really important thing. If I don't put a multiplication sign between the K and the X, it's actually just going to recognize it as one thing, and I'm going to end up with the wrong answer. So make sure you have a multiplication sign between the K and the X in this question. You hit enter, it's done, and now we can simply use our distance formula. So control this to get the square root up, and I'm going to go G of 1, close brackets, subtract G of negative 1, square it. Sorry, make sure you've got that at the right spot. We're squaring the whole thing there. And now I'm going to plus, this is going to be 1 plus 1, and I'm squaring that as well. And that's what our answer is going to be. Our answer is going to be 2 the square root of k squared minus 2k plus 2. That is our answer. How many marks is this? This is a 2 marker. So both this should be a sufficient amount of working, but let's just now look at our examiner's report to get clarification. So as you can see, 64% of students got the full 2 marks here. The distance formula is written out like so. As you can see here, you got the g of -1 as such, and then 2k squared minus 2k plus 2. As in question 1b, some students did their solutions by hand and made arithmetic errors, especially sign errors. This would have been time consuming and was sometimes given. So make sure that, if you don't need to do something by hand, you shouldn't be. You should be using your CAS. Some incorrect answers contained x. When defining g of x is equal to this on technology, a multiplication sign must be inserted between k and x. So this is really important. When defining g of x on the technology, a multiplication sign has to be put between the k and the x. Okay, let's keep on going. Here it says find the values of k such that the distance CD is equal to k plus 1. Well, what is the distance CD? Well, we found that just here. The distance CD is given by this right here. So if I just steal this for a second, Control C, come down here now, that is the distance CD. And what we're trying to find is when it's equal to k plus 1. So I'm going to set that equal to k plus 1, and I'm going to solve it for k. So that means I'm going to come here and I'm going to go Menu, Algebra, Solve. I'm going to take this, I'm going to set that equal to k plus, whoa, let's make sure that's lowercase, k plus 1, solve it for k, and what I'm going to end up with is this right here. So I get 2 answers here. It's only 1 mark, so that means I just need to go k is equal to 1 or k is equal to 7 on 3. Let's look at our examiner's report here. As you can see here, we're solving for when this is equal to k plus 1. And then we're going to get k is equal to 1 or k is equal to 7 on 3. 63% of students got the full 1 mark here. Students who answered question 1CI correctly generally were able to answer this question. Some students gave only 1 value of k. All right, let's close that up and let's come now to our 2 last questions. The diagram below shows the part of the graph G. So here it is. So it's only part of the graph. Remember, this thing's a cubic. So it's going to look something like that, but they're just showing part of the graph. And y is equal to x. So y is equal to x. It would look like that if we would extend it down. But we're just concerning ourselves with what has been drawn here. This graph intersects at the point 0, 0 here and the point AA. Find the values of A in terms of k. So we need to find this intersection point. It's a 1 marker. But if we were to write down what we're doing here, we're getting g of x, and we're setting it equal to x, and then we're going to solve for x. So we come here, we go Menu, we go this, we go Solve, we're going g of x is equal to x for what x values, and then we're going to get a whole bunch of stuff out here, especially because k is in there, and k has, is a variable. It's going to look a bit more confusing than we're used to, but we're just going to take our time with it. What they're really saying here is that we have this answer, we have this answer, and we have x is equal to 0. So that means after all of that, we have plus or minus the square root of k plus 1 and 0. After reading through all that, 0 makes sense. The fact that we've got a negative and a positive, the square root of k plus 1, also makes sense because they've only shown us a portion of this graph, but remember it also goes backwards as well. But now we have to figure out, well, what's a going to be? Well, a has to be greater than 0 because it's over here. A has to be greater than 0, so therefore my a is going to be the square root of k plus 1. It's not going to be the negative 1, and that's because a is positive. So that's my 1 mark right there. Let's now look at the examiner's report to see what they did. As you can see, 62% of students got the full 1 mark. We're solving g of x is equal to x for x, and we end up with this. And then a is going to be equal to the square root of k plus 1 as a is greater than 0. A common incorrect answer was this. So here a is equal to plus or minus the square root of k plus 1. But just on the face of it, that doesn't make any sense because, you know, we're asked for this point right here. You can't have two values. By inspection of the graph, the answer was positive. So simply just looking at this and saying, hey, a has to be positive. Some students found k in terms of a instead of a in terms of k. Okay, let's now finish this off with our last question here, which is asking us to find the area of the shaded regions in terms of k. It's worth 2 marks. We're going to need some working out. All right, so in order to do this, we know that this point right here is 0, and we know this point right here is the square root of k plus 1. And we've got two graphs here. So we're simply going to come here, use our integrals. Our top value is going to be k plus 1. Our bottom value is going to be 0. And then we're going to go x, because it's the top graph, minus my bottom graph, like so, and dx. We're going to put that into our CAS and get our answer. That's our working out mark. Let's now get our answer mark. So I'm going to go shift plus to get the integral up. Then I'm going to go 0 here. And then I can actually come up here and just steal this like that. So that's there now. And then I'm going to get x minus g of x, close my brackets, get x there. And what I'm going to end up with is that. So my answer here is going to be k plus 1 squared over 4. And that's a 2 marker. Hopefully I've got enough there for 2 marks. Let's look at our examiner's report here. As you can see, 42% of students got the full 2 marks here. And that is exactly the working that we have shown. Very good. K plus 1. Yep, k plus 1 squared over 4. This was a common error, leaving out the brackets in this. To avoid these errors, it would have been better to use the expression this, and that's what we did. Some students overcomplicated the question by breaking up the areas into different sections. The easiest approach was to use the upper function, subtract the lower function. There was evidence that some students substituted in k plus 1 instead of the square root of k plus 1, which resulted in the answer of this. So just be really careful. Again, I'm totally sympathetic to just silly mistakes. They happen, and you just got to be on your guard for them. So make sure you aren't making those silly mistakes. Okay, and with that, I believe we have finished going through this question. Hopefully you found all of this helpful in going through it. And I'm just looking through all my answers here, just double checking them. Perfect. Good. All right, this all looks good. Hopefully you found this helpful, and I will see you in the next video.